It was a clear summer day, hot and blue and brown. Despite the beauty of the house, half of the grass around it was dead. They had water restrictions in place, and the thought almost made me smile. I was thinking of Michael, who was making a killing at his job. He was a firefighter, and the overtime brought on by the fire certainly wasn't hurting his wallet any. My smile quickly faded, though, as I heard a familiar cheery call. "Oh, Rachel! Oh, honey, hold on!" She was all but tripping over the porch in her eagerness to reach me. Marcy Gray wasn't a bad woman. She was just incredibly annoying. "I just thought of something else." She reached me just as I sank into my car, her now huffing and panting like a bull that had seen red. I forced myself to smile. "What can I do for you, Miss Gray?" "Oh, thank you," she gushed. She was still gasping. "You see my little lawn here, yes? It gets so ugly in the summer, just downright appalling if you ask me. I tried putting in gnomes, and it still looks like a war zone. I tried bushes, but they're as dry and prickly as barbed wire." "Uh-huh," I nodded, only listening to half of what she said. "But I was thinking, a smooth walkway leading up to the door. It would be simply magical, wouldn't it?" There wasn't a breeze. I passed my arm over my forehead. I hated to sit here in the heat. Then I realized she was talking again. "You could imagine how it would twist, just there, and I could put in fairy lights. You want me to pave in a cement walkway for you?" Marcy jumped up once, twice. "Oh, yes. You always understand, don't you, Rachel?" "It's Miss Lewis, actually." "Uh-huh," I answered. "Give me whatever quote you want, and I'll double it," Marcy cried. She had that wide smile again, and she was using the Bambi eyes, which looked more creepy and desperate than cute when placed into the face of a 50-year-old woman. The violent red lipstick didn't help. "Sure thing. I'll just send a price to "Thank you," she squeaked, kissing my cheek. "Please don't touch me." Then my next thought came. Get me out of here. I drove home as fast as my little beater car would allow. My job wasn't terrible. I was a mason. The pay was all right, and I liked the work well enough. What I didn't like so much were the clients. Sometimes I felt like Marcy's slave. She paid great, but it was Marcy. Why did it have to be her? I was a witch, magical and mysterious, but lately I'd felt more like Marcy's lackey. My apartment was spacious, with 2 bedrooms. I hadn't been in the other room for 3 weeks now. It was an ordinary place, but for the books scattered about. I picked up one tome, bound in leather. Wasn't there a charm in here for changing personalities? Of course, I knew that would be about as successful as trying to make a goldfish talk. I was a creationist. I didn't specialize in manipulation, in glamours, or morphing. I specialized in fixing things, in making them. That was part of what made my job unsatisfying. There was so much more I could be doing with my spells than pasting bricks together. When somebody knocked on my door, I nearly threw the book at the wall in frustration. I practically stomped to the door. When I opened it, though, all my ill feelings vanished. "Mike! Kim!" I pulled them into a hug. They laughed as I led them to my parlor, a single table that sat beside the kitchen square. It was all one room, the living room included. "You look grouchy," Mike noted. He was a tall person, with dark skin, muscles corded along his thin arms. His primary feature was his dome of frizzy hair. Then there was his easy smile. "You actually got time off?" I gasped, honestly surprised. "Hey, I put out fires fast. When they aren't looking, I just drop the hose, stick out my hands, and whoosh, I got another medal last week." "Very humble," Kim murmured. Her hair was black and sleek, falling past her shoulders. She was pretty, her clothes subtle, but obviously expensive. She grinned at me. "You ought to brag a little, girl. I'm not the only one saving lives." "It's not as fun as you think it is," Kim replied. "These fires have put a lot of people in the hospital. Even spells can only do so much for smoke inhalation." "I wish I could be a doctor," I sighed. I wasn't a healer, though. The best I could do was dabble in the art, but I never would be great at it. "No, you really don't," Kim said, grim. "I got a surprise for you, though." "What, free medical coverage for a year?" I asked. Kim rolled her eyes. "I just ordered Chinese food, my treat. Thought you'd be hungry." "I'm sure you ordered it from Mike," I laughed. "He's the one who's going to eat half of it." "I do not." "Do so," Kim hissed. It was 40 minutes later that the food arrived, though the party didn't stop. Mike boasted about a few houses he had saved, and I grumbled about a few I had fixed. "There's no getting around it," I mumbled, my mouth filled with noodles. "Your jobs are cool. Mine's boring." "Well, at least you don't specialize in glamour magic," Mike said, mouth also full. "You know what they say. You're either a scummy politician or a Can we keep this civilized?" Kim snapped. "I'm trying to eat." "Well, it's true." "It's not," I mumbled. Mike and Kim both stared at me, shocked. I dropped my fork, suddenly not hungry. Stephen wasn't either of those things. "Oh, shit," Mike looked away. "I forgot he was an actor, right?" Kim asked, trying to salvage the situation. Her dark eyes were soft, perhaps even desperate. "Yeah," I poked at my food. "Crap, I'm really sorry, Rachel. You know me. I don't think before I talk. I just blather on. Peace," I said, holding up a hand. "It's okay." Another kind of spell was cast over the gathering after that. I didn't know whether it was my fault or Mike's, but the damage was done. They left sooner than usual, only hesitating in my doorway. "Are you sure there isn't anything I can do?" Kim offered. "No." My voice sounded too hollow. I swallowed. "Thanks for coming out. It was nice." When they left, the apartment became empty, like a haunted house or an old crypt. It felt like the home of a witch now. I was a creationist. I was supposed to be able to fix things. It was what I did. Still, I couldn't fix my life. I couldn't just paste wall filler over this awful emptiness. I cleaned my room, trying to distract myself. Mostly I had books to contend with, but I froze as I picked up one, this volume heavier than the others. I read the title just once, The Origins of Creation. It was a book I had read countless times before. I had nearly discarded it. It was verbatim at this point. But there was something... I found it. The introductory paragraph. There was only one sentence I was interested in, really. The one universal fact among our kind. It is said that God, whether a man or a woman, was a creationist. No one can create life but God. No one can reverse death but God. That was also true. But who had tried? I slammed the book shut, almost forcefully. I could feel the smile spreading over my face. I rushed to the phone, almost sweating as the thrill of my idea coursed through me. I cancelled all my appointments. For the first time ever, I booked time off. Marcy was crushed, but I didn't care anymore. I didn't care about anything but what came next. I was going to bring Stephen back. It would be 3 weeks before they started to wonder, before they stopped trying to call. I should have worried about an intervention, but honestly, my behavior wasn't so unusual. Witches went into seclusion all the time to focus on their experiments. They forgot to eat and sleep. They didn't work. My behavior was normal. At least, that's what I told myself. Week 1 was filled with failures. I approached it like another project, another house. The difference was that I was the client. I called the shots. I went into the nearby woods to gather my materials. Rocks were best for cement. Sticks were best for wood, and so on. You didn't need a Home Depot gift card when you were a creationist. The materials I was looking for now, though, were altogether different from anything I had needed before. I had tried plants. Leaves had a waxy texture, almost like skin. I had hummed and sang and chanted over my work, but it had been a failure. I had gotten the shape right, but no more than that. The dandelion fluff I had transformed only looked like hair. The leaves and the stems were now pinkish peach color, but the material still tore too easily. This was going to be hard. I tried rocks for the bones, and mud for the face. I tried to sculpt and mold, but the materials fought me. I had made a few dolls, nothing more. I felt stupid. You couldn't make life from inanimate objects, from nothing. On the 3rd week, I wasn't doing much of anything. Mostly I paced between the 2 rooms, agitated and mumbling to myself. Something smelled funky. It took me too long to realize it was me. When I passed myself in the mirror, I noted that I wore the same clothes, a t-shirt and sweats. I hadn't changed. Now my clothes were rumpled. I sat on the edge of the old bed, beside another failure. I stared at the photograph for too long, until my tears blurred out the image of a smiling face. Only a knock on the door stopped me from a full-blown sob session. Almost like a zombie, I ambled over to answer it. "Oh, girl, you don't look so good," Mike said, his voice calm and smooth. Kim stood beside him, less composed. "What the hell is wrong with you?" she gasped. "Do you have any idea how worried we've been? Mike was getting ready to burn down the door when you—" Kim stopped. Then she sniffed the air. "What is that smell? You crafting in your home again?" "Dude, that's messy." Mike shook his head. "You got to get a proper casting room." Kim shouldered past me, and Mike followed. Before I could stop them, they were entering his room. They were following the smell. "It's a doll." Kim stared at the figure. She stared at them all. "How many of these did you—" "Uh-oh." Mike had the photograph now. "I think I know what this is about." "What?" Kim sounded irritated. "Somebody's been naughty," Mike grimaced. "Rachel's been attempting necromancy." As one, they turned to me. I felt my skin reddening. "I have not. Obsessive behavior, social isolation, creepy human-sized figures. Rachel, you can't fool me. You're trying to bring your brother back, aren't you?" I said nothing. There was a big ball in my throat, which ached. I couldn't even move. "You know you can't," Kim whispered. "Rachel, I'm a doctor. I see people die all the time. Healers have already attempted this. Everybody has. I can prevent death, sometimes. But Stephen is gone. You need to let go." "God was a creationist," I shrieked, surprised at myself, at the anger which raced through me. "That's a theory, anyways," Mike muttered. "I have to try. You don't have to do anything. It wasn't your fault." Kim was pleading. I paused. There was something very obvious I had missed. "I know what I have to do." "Rachel, where are you?" When I came back, they were gone. When I returned, I did so with cages. The birds hopped within them, occasionally chirping. You couldn't make life from nothing, but you could make life from life. That was what I was thinking as I began to chant, as I began to fuse the birds together. When I looked down on him, I smiled. Eyes closed and hands folded over his chest, he was perfect. My smile only widened when Stephen opened his eyes. "How are you?" I rasped. I knew those eyes, warm and brown. The curls were the same, black, framing the boyish face. He looked so much like me. We were twins. He was silent. "How are you, Stephen?" I asked again. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if he would be confused or scared or even angry. When he wound his fingers around my throat and squeezed, I could only register shock. This thing that was choking me looked like my brother. He looked like Stephen, but Stephen was still dead because there was nothing in those eyes. In the eyes I loved, there was only emptiness, only death, because death was all this thing knew. It was funny how I could watch everything after it happened. Days passed, but I wasn't a part of them anymore. With no body of my own, I watched the thing move through the apartment. Kim, and Mike too, came to visit me again. When Mike was almost killed, Kim was able to distract the beast. It turned to face her, and Mike took the opening. For once, he used fire. He used his magic to destroy, rather than save. Then Kim was healing him, and I was surprised when they kissed. How long had that been going on? Was I that clueless? It was harder to see them in my bedroom, after they had burnt the creature to ashes. My body lied there, motionless and without expression. I didn't want to watch anymore. Then don't. I couldn't see anyone. I couldn't see or feel myself. I knew that voice, though. He no longer had his body, but I would always know. "I'm sorry, Stephen," I whispered. "I'm so sorry." They got each other. And you've got me. I never went away, you know. I was just waiting. He had watched it all. And now? Now we can leave. I could imagine him taking my hand. There was no other way to describe it. We were just connected, two invisible orbs of warmth. "Okay," I sighed. Mike and Kim became invisible, but in the darkness, new shapes began to form. There were colors and voices. And Stephen, in that instant, I knew we were home.